Y'all are tired. Seriously, I hear you. Me too. It's been a busy several weeks. Travel, work, peopling, which is exhausting for the introverts among us. And you're excited. You've been doing really great stuff. And I want to hear all about it. I know. There's a lot going on. Pain and suffering. A lot of people are looking for answers. The political environment is scary. I get it. It's a lot to handle. It's a lot for me to handle. What we need is to get away, to take a little time away from it all and just rest and renew. What do you think? That's kind of how I picture Jesus wrapping up his debriefing with the apostles before they load up onto a boat and take off, headed for a nice secluded spot where they can sleep, talk, play games, and just enjoy doing nothing. I could also imagine that conversation happening out in the narthex or the parlor. We're all busy, busier than ever. It never lets up. I'm not going to ask anyone to call themselves out, but my guess is that many of us have checked email on our phones since parking the car. Remember the days of checking work email at work? Or that time when the only place you could go to your computer at home, and that was the only place you could log into your AOL or Netscape account. Between work, church, Jessica's Scout Troop, Will's Cub Scout Den, school, parenting, husbanding, my schedule is full. But a few weeks ago, I had 2 nights in a row, a Friday and a Saturday night, where I had nothing to do. No meetings, no events. Monica was working. Our friend group was all out of town. I logged out of work at 5 p.m., and by 6:30, I was texting Monica. I am so bored. I no longer know how to rest. It's ingrained in me to be busy, so much so that I don't know how to be idle. We're busy and we're stressed and we're tired, and so were the apostles. And today we hear Jesus not only advocate for some Sabbath time, but he's going to make it happen. Get your stuff and get in the boat, we're going. And they do. We do. We load up the coolers and the beach chairs, the sunscreen, that novel we don't want to admit that we're reading, and we head out. We pull up to the hotel, unload the car, go into the lobby. We casually glance at our phone, and what do we see? Our boss who has to lay off staff and doesn't know how to make that decision. Our best friend who just got back from the doctor and needs somebody to talk to. Our mother who didn't tell us about the oncology appointment today. Our child who's going through a divorce and needs mom and dad. Jesus and the disciples get off the boat and they are met by people in need. And he had compassion for them. Compassion. To suffer together. Those who research emotions at Berkeley define it as the feeling that arises when you are confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. The Greek word Mark uses is splanchnizomai, a churning of the gut. Jesus' stomach ached for these people. So Jesus and the disciples did what we do. Set aside the much-needed me time for the seriously needed we time. He prioritizes others in that moment and teaches them even though he is exhausted. These people need Jesus. They're desperate for him. They found out where he was going and beat the boat there on foot. They hunger for him. So he feeds them, spiritually and physically. We don't hear it today, but this is actually where the feeding of the 5,000 happens. The disciples begged Jesus to send the people away to eat, and so that they can get a break. But Jesus holds the people close in their needs and feeds them. Then they all get back in the boat and head to Bethsaida. But there's a storm that blows them off course. They get lost and end up in Gennesaret, where more people are waiting to be healed by Jesus. They came from everywhere, bringing others that needed healing. So what do Jesus and the disciples do? Ministry, that's what they do. They're not where they intended to be, but they're where they need to be. They are where they are needed. So who are we? Who do we identify with in today's gospel? We too are desperate for Jesus, for his love and healing in our world, in our nation, our families, ourselves. We need Jesus, and he always has time for us with grace and patience and selfless love abounding. We also know that we are called to follow Christ's example and to see to the needs of his people, to tend his sheep. We set aside what we want, maybe even need, for other people. We volunteer at times that may be inconvenient. We miss out on things to help others. But how far can we go? There is no end to the suffering of God's people. There will always be loved ones and strangers who are in need. In all of our efforts to help other people, too often we neglect ourselves. We are so worried about meeting the needs of our siblings in the world that we ignore what we need. Sometimes what we need is to stop and rest. Too many of us are willing to run ourselves ragged to benefit others. However, when it gets to be too much, how effective are we? If our bucket is empty, how can we fill others? Sometimes that's easier said than done, and I'll need to admit that I need to practice what I quite literally am preaching. As the summer comes to a close, work picks up, school starts, and all of the things that go along with that, I ask you to join me on a journey of self-care. That doesn't mean drop everything. It's not about simply clearing the calendar or not doing the work that you feel called to do. It's about recognizing when you are the one in need and admitting that to yourself. That's difficult because it's a very vulnerable place to be. But it's okay. Jesus knows that we need self-care, whatever that looks like for you. It's okay to be the sheep that needs to be tended. Whatever you need, take care of yourself, because it's the only way we can continue to care for each other. So find a book, a TV show to binge, a garden to plant, a trail to hike, a canvas to paint, a scarf to knit, a fish to catch, or maybe just a chair in the corner of the house to sit in for 10 minutes and be bored.